Today I'm going to discuss the meninges. The meninges, they are layers covering the brain. They are divided into three layers. The outer, we call it dura mater, and the middle one, arachnoid, and then pia mater. If this is simple drawing of the skull, this way. This is the skull, and the brain inside it. If we opened the skull, we are not going to see the brain directly because it is covered by these three layers: dura mater, arachnoid, and pia mater. If we open the skull, we are going to see the dura mater. The dura mater is formed by two layers. The dura mater is formed by two layers. The outer layer, we call it endosteal layer. And the inner one, we call it meningeal layer. So, what are the differences between these two layers? The endosteal layer, the outer, is covering the skull from inside, just like that, and this layer will not go to the spinal cord. Only it is found inside the skull. While the other layer, which is the meningeal, which is inside the meningeal, it will go from the foramen magnum, this is we call foramen magnum, and covering the spinal cord. So this is the difference between these two layers. And these two layers forming the dura mater. Now, in between these two layers, we have sinuses. We have sinuses, big veins. Big veins found between these two layers. We call them venous sinuses. The meningeal layer, I discussed it in a previous video. It formed extensions. One of them here, we call it falx cerebri, this way, and another here, we call it tentorium, and falx cerebelli, and here diaphragmacelli. These four layers related to the meningeal layer. Here, another showing you the meninges, and we have venous sinuses. First one, located here, started from anterior part and passing here. This sinus, we call it superior sagittal sinus. Another sinus located in the inferior border of the falx cerebri, we call it inferior sagittal sinus. Here, there's a connection, we call it straight sinus. Straight sinus. And at the border of the tentorium, we have two sinuses. This one and the other one. We call them transverse sinus. Transverse sinus, left and right. And here inferiorly, we have occipital sinus. At the end, anterior end of this transverse sinus, we have S-shaped sinus. S-shape, like this one, S-shaped sinus. This is, we call it sigmoid sinus, right and left. sigmoid sinus. From the upper border of sigmoid sinus, we have here passing a sinus and another one. Here there is a sinus and here another one. If this is superior petrosal sinus, superior petrosal sinus, of course this must be inferior petrosal sinus. The same thing here, superior petrosal sinus and inferior petrosal sinus. They are extend anteriorly until reaching a region here. We call it, this is a big sinus, we call it cavernous sinus. So these are the major sinuses found in the cranial cavity. Where they are located? Between the two layers of endosteal and meningeal. They are located. This is repeated again, superior sagittal sinus. This is inferior sagittal sinus. This is straight, transverse sinuses. At the end of them, S shape, we call it sigmoid sinus. From the upper border, superior petrosal sinus and inferior petrosal sinus, and the same thing here. They are extend anteriorly until reaching the region we call it cavernous sinus. Now, if we finish the dura mater, I'm going to discuss the arachnoid and pia mater. They are transparent layers. Arachnoid is very vascular, and the difference between the arachnoid and pia mater, the arachnoid passing this way over the brain. This is the folds of the brain. This is, we call it gyrus. This is, we call it sulcus. So the arachnoid mater, this one, arachnoid mater, is just passing over the brain. It is not passing in between. It is not passing in the sulci. While here, the third layer, which is the pia mater, very adherent to the brain, this way. Very adherent to the brain surface, and it is passing over the gyri and enter the sulci in this way. So this is the difference between this layer, blue in color, arachnoid. It is not passing in the sulci. While pia mater, it is passing and very adherent. The space between arachnoid and pia mater, here, this space, this region, we call it subarachnoid space. We call it subarachnoid space.